It's October 25th, 1978. A small, independent movie by the name of Halloween was released into the theaters and introduced the world to Michal Audrey Myers, the unstoppable slasher. Oh, this? Nah, it's just something I stir coffee with. So this here is the Michal Myers house from the movie Halloween, the very first movie Halloween, right behind me. It is at this house that we are introduced to Michal Myers, a 6-year-old Michal Myers. This is where the opening scene where Michal Myers has his first victim. Now, this house actually has a lot of history behind it, a lot of real history behind it. Not just that it's been in this movie, but there is a little bit of an interesting story behind this house. We're gonna get a little more into that, and I'm gonna tell you later on in the video how you can find out more about that. Until then, let's move on to other filming locations, because we got a lot to cover. Now, I do need to mention this, just in case you haven't seen, you're one of the very few that haven't seen this movie. Spoilers ahead. There will be a lot of spoilers in this. Even though, not the opening scene to the movie, however, this is the opening establishing shot of Haddonfield, Illinois. And this is where we meet our protagonist, Laurie Strode, and her friends. They all live in the same neighborhood in Haddonfield, Illinois. The same neighborhood as Michal Myers. Fun little fact, Haddonfield, Illinois is actually South Pasadena, California. Now, this is the house where we meet our protagonist, Laurie Strode, played by Jaimie Lee Curtis. And we see her at this house right here. Now, what's interesting about this house is that this house, I believe, has 2 different addresses. But when we first meet Laurie Strode, she comes out of this door right here. And her dad, her father, the real estate agent, comes out, and just a reminder to drop the keys off at the Myers house, because later on that day, someone was coming by to look at the house. Now, you see her come out of that door that I just showed several times, but at some point in the movie, you actually see her walk up to here. Now, these houses are connected. I believe they are different addresses. I'm not sure how this works. Later in the movie, you see Laurie Strode sitting on this very pedestal with a pumpkin, waiting for her friend, Annie, to pick her up. Right here is where she was waiting. Laurie Strode was such an awesome babysitter that she remembered Tommy Doyle early on in the movie, or asked if they can carve pumpkins. So that's why she had the pumpkin sitting here waiting for Annie to pick her up. It turns out the woman that owns this house encourages people to come by and use this pumpkin to take some photo ops. Thank you, ma'am. The really cool thing about this house too is it looks exactly the same as it did in the movie. The only thing that's different is the color, but other than that, this is pretty much the house. Another fun fact, as I sit on the pedestal that Laurie Strode sat on, Halloween was made for a little over $300,000, but it grossed at the box office over $70 million, making it the highest grossing independent film of all time up to that point. And I believe it held that position until 1999, when another low budget little movie by the name of The Blair Witch Project came out. Also, this is a good time to bring up the fact that a lot has changed since 1978. A lot of the houses have changed, a lot of moving has happened, so just be aware of that. Sometimes you're going to be looking at something and you're going to be like, hey, that's not it. But I assure you, this is it. Right here is where Laurie and Tommy Doyle are walking together. As mentioned earlier, Laurie's father is a real estate agent. She is to drop a key off at the Myers house. As they're walking over there, little Tommy Doyle warns Laurie, do not go up to the boogeyman's house. It's haunted. This right here is where the boogeyman, Michal Myers' house, used to be. Right here. Used to be a whole row of houses. Michal Myers sees Laurie. It's pretty much the start of it all. From then on, he starts to stalk her. And it starts off right down this road. Laurie starts walking down this road. She's singing a song, and it's actually a made-up song for the movie. They didn't want to get the rights. They were keeping the movie low budget. They didn't want to, spend too much money. So they made up their own song. And she starts walking down this way singing, I wish I had you all alone, just the two of us. And as she's doing that, Michal Myers' shoulder and head, you see just the outline of his head and shoulder, staring at her, breathing heavily through the mask that he's wearing, watching her, stalking her. So, right now, I am standing in front of South Pasadena High School. And this is where we meet a couple of Laurie Strode's friends. We meet Linda Vanderklok, and we actually see in this scene, coming down this hallway, the beginning of the walk where we actually get to meet her. And then a little bit later in the walk, we meet Annie Brackett. This is pretty much the beginning of the walk, and they walk this way, and not like the Aerosmith song, but they do walk this way, and pretty interesting stuff ahead, because this walk not only introduces us to Laurie Strode's two close friends, this is also where we start seeing some tension between the Laurie Strode gang and Michal Myers. And right here at Highland Street and Fairview Avenue is where we get the scene where the walking continues. So we see this right here. We see this little cornerstone thing here. And this is where Laurie and Linda Vanderklok, they come around this corner right here. Now there used to be a tree right here. Since then has been removed. So like I said, things do change. So it's not always going to look exactly the same. But this is where they come around and they continue talking about their plans, things that they're going to do. It's Halloween, so they're planning all kinds of, stuff to do. And this is also where Annie Brackett catches up to them and says, hey, you guys didn't wait for me. So from here, they continue walking down this street. So at this very point during the walk, as they continue walking and talking, they cross the street. And they kind of walk in the street for a little while here. And they continue walking, but then they eventually come all the way across. Right about here, when Laurie notices that she forgot her book back at school. From there, she turns around and says, I need to go back to the school and get the book. And as that conversation is going on, that's when you see the stolen station wagon come around this corner. And Laurie notices it right away because she saw it earlier on in the movie. She thought it was a very strange thing. She's been seeing Michal Myers kind of somewhat following her around, and she sees Michal Myers come around that corner in the stolen station wagon. And it was at this point where Michal Myers drives by them, and then Annie Brackett decides to yell out, "Hey, don't you know speed kills?" And at that very moment, Michal Myers slams on his brakes. Right here, you see him slam on his brakes, stopping the stolen station wagon right here. But luckily for the girls, at that point, Michal Myers did not do anything. He just continued to drive off in the same direction he was going. Another fun fact, it only took John Carpenter a little over 20 days to finish the movie Halloween.
Hey, jerk! Speed kills!
So right here on Montrose Avenue and Oakley Street, the walk home from school continues. The girls continue walking down Montrose Avenue. So it's up to about this point right here is when Linda Vanderclock, you see her walk off to her house. So she walks off to this house right here. A little fun fact for everybody, this house was also used in Mama's Family. This is during the beginning. This is the exterior of the house. Now after Linda goes off to her house, this is the part where it's apparent that Michal Myers is stalking Laurie and her friends, because right behind me is the infamous hedge. This is the hedge that Michal Myers pops out while Laurie is looking forward. Annie is looking at something, her books or something. She's distracted. But Laurie sees Michal Myers. And then good old Annie, being Annie, started questioning Laurie, saying, "Oh, you're just seeing things, and oh, there's nobody over here." So Annie decides to walk over here by herself, and she looks behind the hedge and sees this. Nothing. Sees nothing. Michal Myers disappears, and Laurie swears that she saw Michal Myers ditch behind this hedge. From there, they continue their walk, going the same way, and this right here, just down the road from Linda's house, is Annie's house. This is where Annie lives, and it's just right down the road from the hedge too. So if you're ever out here, these are all on the same road. Linda's house, the hedge that Michal Myers disappears behind, and Annie's house. This is where Laurie says goodbye to Annie, and I'll see you tonight, because Annie and Laurie are going to the same neighborhood to babysit two different kids in the same neighborhood. So they're saying bye-bye, see you later. And this is where Laurie Strode turns around and bumps into Sheriff Brackett. And this is actually, I believe, the first jump scare in the movie. It's a kind of a fake jump scare, but a jump scare nonetheless. Now, right across the street from the Michal Myers house, where it is now, obviously at the time it was filmed that Michal Myers house was in a different spot. Like I said, I'll get to that a little more later in the video. Here, right now, we are standing at the hardware store where Michal Myers, off camera, broke into the hardware store to steal a Halloween mask, some rope, and 2 knives. It was a hardware store at the time, but now it is a restaurant. It's called Radika. I think that's how you pronounce it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this is the scene where Laurie and Annie pull up. They pull up on the side of the road, right about in here. Right in here. And this is where Annie sees her dad. Now her dad's the sheriff. And they pull over, and he's the one that tells them that there was a break-in, and he tells them what was stolen. Now at this point too, over there in that corner, Michal Myers was following them in the stolen station wagon. After they have the small conversation with Annie's dad, the sheriff, they drive away, and immediately Dr. Loomis comes over and meets Sheriff Brackett for the first time. And Dr. Loomis, with a very urgent message, needs to talk to the sheriff. But the sheriff is attending to the robbery. He says, "Give me 10 minutes and we'll talk." Now when the sheriff walks away from Dr. Loomis, and Dr. Loomis, he says, "Okay, cool, I'll wait here for a minute." When he walks away, this is a part where Michal Myers in the stolen station wagon crosses this street right here, still following the girls. Dr. Loomis is looking this way, the way I'm looking, and Michal Myers drives by Dr. Loomis without even knowing that Michal Myers, the man he's looking for, just drove by him. Interesting fact, when Laurie and Annie are driving up to the hardware store to talk to Annie's father, and Michal Myers is following them, they have playing on the radio in the background, Blue Oyster Cult, "Don't Fear the Reaper." So now we are in an Los Angeles neighborhood. It's essentially Hollywood. And this is where the movie really ramps up. This is where the Wallace house is, and the Doyle house. It's pretty unbelievable to be standing in front of these houses. One of my favorite movies. Now the Wallace house has changed significantly since the recording of Halloween. There's been a lot of additions to the house, so it's almost unrecognizable. But if you really look at it, if you imagine that the garage isn't there and it's fully painted white again, it looks just like the house from the movie. Now in this house is where most of the murders happen. This is where basically all of Laurie's good friends get murdered by Michal Myers. You have Annie, then Bob, which is probably the coolest kill in the movie, and then you have Linda. Now just a couple houses down and across the street is the Doyle house. This is where Laurie comes to babysit Tommy Doyle. And throughout the movie, well, throughout this part of the movie anyway, Tommy keeps seeing Michal Myers across the street at the Wallace house. Now right here is the house that Laurie runs up to after she finds out that all her friends have died. She runs up to this house right here and pounds on the door, screaming for help, screaming for help. And what do? People basically turn on the porch light, they look out the window, they turn off the porch light and turn off the living room light and completely ignore her. After being completely ignored by the neighbors about her tragic discovery, she runs back to the Doyle house. She forgot her key. She pounds on the door, begging that Tommy gets downstairs quickly to let her in. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole movie. Obviously, there's a lot of spoilers already in this, but this is a scene where she is pounding on that door, and I believe Tommy comes to this window here, and he was asleep, so she woke him up, and he's kind of groggy, and he's very slow moving, coming down the stairs to let her in as Michal Myers creeps up slowly on Laurie in the background. And that happens right in this area. Standing right here at the corner of Tommy Doyle's house. This would be the view looking over to Lindsay Wallace's house. And we get a lot of shots of Michal Myers, Tommy Doyle, watching Michal Myers right there. So I'm actually not sure how true this is. You can't believe everything you read online, but the Doyle house right behind me here, this was actually used as the exterior of the Doyle house. And the actual house that Laurie runs up to and begs for help, that's also the house that was the interior of the Doyle's house. Not sure how true that is, but if it's true, then this house would be the interior of the Doyle house. And this house back here is the exterior. Now, also, this is the Wallace house right here, and that supposedly was only used as the exterior as well. And the house right next door to the actual exterior of the house, this here was used as the interior shots of the Wallace house. Don't know how true that is. Take it with a grain of salt. I have not verified. I only found this on one website. It seemed like they knew what they were talking about. So I tend to lean towards I believe them, but you never know. So the interior and the exterior of the Wallace house right next to each other. I just want to say that if they would have just listened to Tommy Doyle from the beginning, things probably would have turned out differently. Tommy Doyle throughout the whole movie was pretty much warning people in a childlike way, but everything he said in the movie that led up to the night of the killings, they were correct. Along with Dr. Loomis. Those two characters were the two characters that were warning people throughout the whole movie. Another fun fact, even though Michal Myers was mainly played by Nick Castle, fellow director and good friend of John Carpenter's, there were overall 7 different people that played Michal Myers throughout Halloween. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves back at the Michal Myers house. Now, remember how I said I was going to give you some more information later on in the video about this house and the real life things that happened to this house? Well, then if you want to know more about that, and I think you do if you like this video, you're going to want to check out this video right over here. It's all about this house. It's nothing but about this house. Check this video out right here, Michal Myers' house. You're going to dig it. It's more information than you'll ever need. Check it out.